They called me a gold digger when I married billionaire Ashton Hale. The media painted me as another fortune hunter, but what they didn't know was that when I first met him, he wasn't a billionaire at all. He was broken, homeless, and had lost everything. This is our real story. Before I take you on this journey that changed both our lives forever, I need you to do something for me. If you believe that real love can survive the cruelest judgment, if you've ever been misunderstood or had your motives questioned when all you were trying to do was follow your heart, then hit that like button right now. Because this story isn't just about me and Ashton. It's about everyone who's ever been labeled, dismissed, or written off before people knew the truth. I'm about to share something so personal, so raw, that I've never told anyone outside our closest circle. There were moments in this story where I questioned everything about myself, where the weight of public hatred nearly broke me. But there were also moments of such pure love and vindication that they restored my faith in humanity. If stories like this matter to you, if you want to hear more real accounts of how love and truth can triumph over lies and prejudice, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happened next. My name is Luna Brooks, and 3 years ago, I was just a night shift nurse trying to make ends meet. Today, I'm married to one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the world. But the path between those 2 points nearly destroyed me. It tested everything I believed about loyalty, about standing by someone when the whole world tells you you're wrong, and about the price of loving someone unconditionally. What I'm about to tell you will make you angry. It will make you question how quickly we judge people we don't know. And hopefully, by the end, it will restore a little bit of your faith in the power of truth. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the people the world loves to hate are actually the heroes of the story. So buckle up, because this ride gets intense, and I promise you, the ending is worth every twist and turn we're about to take together. It was October 15th, 3 years ago, and I was pulling a double shift at City General Hospital. You know those nights when the rain just won't stop, and everything feels heavy and gray? That was this night. I'd been on my feet for 16 hours straight, and all I wanted was to get to my car and drive home to my tiny apartment, where I could collapse into bed. But as I walked through the parking garage, something made me stop. There, slumped against the concrete wall near the dumpsters, was a man. At first I thought he might be drunk or on drugs. It wouldn't be the first time I'd found someone passed out in our parking garage. But something about the way he was sitting, so still, so defeated, made my heart clench. I approached carefully, my nursing instincts kicking in. Sir, are you okay?" When he didn't respond, I knelt down and checked his pulse. It was weak, and his skin was cold to the touch. That's when I really looked at him. Despite being filthy and clearly malnourished, he was wearing what looked like an expensive suit, torn and stained now. But you could tell it had once been beautiful. His dark hair was matted, his face gaunt, but there was something about his features that suggested he hadn't always lived this way. I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. Instead of calling security like protocol demanded, I helped him to his feet and brought him inside. The emergency room was chaos that night, but I managed to get him into a bed and run some basic tests. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, and what our psychiatrist later diagnosed as clinical depression, so deep it had essentially shut down his will to live. For 3 days, he wouldn't tell us his name. He'd just stare at the ceiling with these incredibly sad green eyes, and when I'd bring him food, he'd barely touch it. But something about him drew me in. Maybe it was the way he whispered, "Thank you," every time I adjusted his blanket, or how he seemed genuinely surprised that anyone would show him kindness. During my breaks, I'd sit with him and talk about anything, really. The weather, my favorite books, stories from nursing school. On the 4th day, he finally spoke more than 2 words. "My name is Ashton," he said quietly, "and I think I used to be someone important." The way he said it broke my heart, like he wasn't even sure who he was anymore. What happened next probably sounds crazy to most people, but I couldn't just discharge him back to the streets. The hospital's social worker had found him a bed at a local shelter, but something in my gut told me that wasn't going to be enough. This man wasn't just homeless, he was completely lost, and I could see that one more rejection might be the thing that broke him permanently. So I did something I'd never done before in my life. I offered him my couch. My friends thought I'd lost my mind. "Luna, you don't know anything about this guy," my roommate Jessica kept saying. "What if he's dangerous? What if he's lying about everything?" But when I looked at Ashton, danger was the last thing I saw. I saw someone who needed a lifeline. And maybe, just maybe, I could be that for him. Those first few weeks were strange and beautiful. Ashton was incredibly gentle and respectful. He'd wake up before me every morning and have coffee ready. He'd do dishes, fold laundry, anything to help around the apartment. It was like he was terrified I'd change my mind and ask him to leave. We'd talk for hours in the evenings after my shifts. That's when I started to piece together his story. Ashton had been the CEO of a tech company called Hale Tech. He'd built it from nothing in his garage, and within 5 years, it was worth $500 million. But his business partner and best friend since college, someone named Vincent Cross, had been secretly working against him. Vincent had convinced other board members that Ashton was mentally unstable, had falsified financial documents, and eventually orchestrated a complete takeover. In one devastating week, Ashton lost his company, his life savings, and his reputation. The betrayal didn't stop there. His fiancée, Caroline, who he'd been with for 4 years, left him the day the news broke. She literally packed her bags while reporters were camped outside their penthouse and told him she couldn't be associated with his failure. His own family sided with Vincent, believing the lies about Ashton's mental state. His parents, his sister, everyone he'd loved and trusted, turned their backs on him. "I had nothing left, Luna," he told me one night, tears streaming down his face. "I'd lost everything that defined who I was. I couldn't even remember why I wanted to keep living." He'd been on the streets for 2 months before I found him, surviving on whatever kindness strangers might offer, watching his former life being dismantled, piece by piece in the business news. But here's the thing that amazed me about Ashton. Even at his lowest point, even after everything that had been taken from him, he was still fundamentally good. He was grateful for every small kindness, respectful of boundaries, and slowly, I started to see glimpses of the brilliant, passionate man he'd once been. And somewhere in those quiet evenings, sharing takeout on my second-hand couch, I realized I was falling in love with him. Love has a funny way of healing wounds you didn't even know existed. As Ashton started to believe in himself again, something magical began to happen. He got a job at a small coffee shop downtown. Nothing glamorous, just making lattes and cleaning tables. But I'd never seen anyone take such pride in honest work. He'd come home exhausted but smiling, telling me about regular customers who'd started to know his name. But Ashton's mind was too brilliant to stay quiet for long. During his breaks at the coffee shop, he'd sketch out ideas on napkins. Having lived through his medical crisis and watching me work as a nurse, he'd become fascinated with healthcare technology. "What if," he'd say excitedly, "we could create an AI system that could predict patient complications before they happen, something that could save lives and reduce the burden on nurses like you?" I'd watch him come alive when he talked about these ideas, and I knew this was the real Ashton, the innovator, the dreamer, the man who'd built something from nothing before and could do it again. 6 months after I'd found him in that parking garage, a former colleague reached out, someone who'd known the truth about Vincent's betrayal all along, but had been too scared to speak up. This person had started their own investment firm and wanted to back Ashton's new venture. The next 18 months were a whirlwind. Ashton threw himself into developing his medical AI platform, working 18-hour days fueled by determination and a desire to prove that his fall from grace wasn't the end of his story. I supported us both on my nursing salary, but I didn't mind. I believed in him completely. And more importantly, I loved him for who he was, not what he might become again. We got married in a simple courthouse ceremony with just two witnesses, my friend Jessica, who'd finally come around to seeing what I saw in Ashton, and Dr. Martinez from the hospital, who'd watched our entire journey unfold. I wore a dress I'd bought on sale for $60, and Ashton wore the one good suit we'd managed to buy from a thrift store. It was perfect. When Ashton's company launched, everything changed overnight. The medical AI platform revolutionized patient care in ways nobody had imagined. Hospitals around the world wanted it. Investment offers poured in. Within a year, Ashton wasn't just back. He was worth more than he'd ever been before. Forbes called him the Phoenix of tech, but to me, he was still the same man who made my coffee every morning and held me when I came home from difficult shifts. That's when the media attention started, and that's when our real nightmare began. You have to understand, we'd been living in our own little bubble of happiness. Ashton was focused on his work. I was still nursing at the hospital, and we genuinely thought we could keep living our quiet life despite his success. How naive we were. It started with a single paparazzi photo. Ashton and me leaving a charity gala that his company had sponsored. The headline read, "Tech Billionaire's Mystery Wife." Within days, our entire lives were under a microscope. Reporters camped outside our apartment building, followed me to work, and somehow got hold of our marriage certificate. The narrative they created was swift and brutal. Gold-digging nurse snags, vulnerable billionaire. But it got so much worse. My old college acquaintance, Brianna Walsh, saw an opportunity to make money off our story. Brianna had always been jealous of other people's happiness, but I never imagined she'd stoop this low. She sold a completely fabricated story to the tabloids, claiming that I'd always talked about wanting to marry a rich man, that I'd specifically targeted wealthy patients at the hospital. She provided them with old photos of me at nice restaurants, photos that were actually from charity events the hospital had organized, but she conveniently left out that context. The media ran with it. Luna Brooks, the nurse who hunted millionaires, became a trending topic. Complete strangers were calling me a parasite, a predator, a woman who'd manipulated a man during his lowest moment. The harassment became unbearable. I'd get death threats in my hospital locker. People would recognize me on the street and shout horrible things. One particularly vicious blog post included our home address, and suddenly we had strangers showing up at our door at all hours. The hospital administration started getting complaints about having a gold digger on staff, and I could feel my colleagues looking at me differently. But the worst part wasn't the public hatred. It was watching what it did to Ashton. He blamed himself completely. "I should have protected you better," he'd say over and over. "I should have seen this coming." His business associates started suggesting that maybe he should consider distancing himself from me for the sake of the company's image. Can you imagine? The people who were supposed to support him were asking him to abandon the woman who'd saved his life. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, after finding another batch of hate mail that someone had slipped under our door, I packed a suitcase. I wrote Ashton a letter explaining that I loved him too much to let my presence destroy everything he'd rebuilt. I told him I was going to stay with my sister in Portland until the media attention died down, that maybe if I disappeared, people would leave him alone. I was ready to sacrifice our happiness to protect his future. But Ashton had other plans. I'll never forget the moment Ashton found my letter. I was in our bedroom, zipping up my suitcase, with tears streaming down my face, when I heard him call my name from the living room. His voice was different, not broken like I expected, but determined, strong. When I walked out, he was holding my goodbye letter in one hand and his phone in the other. "Luna," he said, looking directly into my eyes, "you saved my life. Now let me save yours." Before I could ask what he meant, he was already making calls to his PR team, to journalists, to anyone who would listen. "I'm calling a press conference," he announced. "Tomorrow morning. It's time everyone knew the truth." I begged him not to do it. "Ashton, this will just make things worse. Let me disappear quietly. Let people forget about me. But he shook his head. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for lies. Not when you're the most selfless person I've ever known. The next morning, cameras from every major news outlet crowded into the conference room at his company's headquarters. I watched from the wings as Ashton approached the podium, and I'd never seen him look more confident, more certain of his purpose. My name is Ashton Hale, he began, and I'm here to tell you about the woman who saved my life when I had nothing left to give. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He showed them security footage from the hospital parking garage from 3 years ago. There I was, finding him collapsed and bringing him inside. He displayed his medical records from that time, showing his diagnosis, his complete financial ruin. But he didn't stop there. Ashton presented bank statements proving that I had supported us both on my nurse's salary for over a year. He showed my nursing awards, letters from patients' families thanking me for my care, testimonials from colleagues about my character. He revealed that I was still working full-time at the hospital, despite his wealth, that I'd insisted on keeping my own bank account, that I'd refused every expensive gift he'd tried to give me. Luna Brooks didn't marry a billionaire, he said, his voice strong and clear. She married a broken man who had lost everything. She saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. She worked double shifts to pay our rent while I found my way back to who I was meant to be. Every accusation against her is not just wrong, it's the complete opposite of who she is. Then came the moment that changed everything. Looking directly into the cameras, Ashton said the words that would become headlines around the world. She saved me when I had nothing left. Not my money, not my status, me. She's the most selfless person I know, and I will not stand by while lies destroy the reputation of the woman who gave me back my life. The room erupted in questions, but Ashton wasn't finished. He announced that he was taking legal action against every outlet that had published false stories, and that Brianna Walsh was being sued for defamation and extortion. Within hours, the narrative completely flipped. The transformation was almost surreal. The same social media platforms that had been filled with hatred toward me were suddenly flooded with apologies and support. #Ashton Luna deserves better started trending worldwide. People were sharing their own stories of being misjudged, of the importance of looking beyond surface appearances. The tabloids that had destroyed my reputation were now falling over themselves to print retractions and public apologies. But the real karma, it was swift and beautiful. Brianna Walsh, who had sold those lies about me for a quick payday, lost her job when her employer discovered she'd been taking money to fabricate stories. The business partners who had suggested Ashton divorce me for the company's image, he fired them immediately, stating that anyone who couldn't see my character wasn't someone he wanted making decisions for his company. Even Vincent Cross, the man who had originally betrayed Ashton, reached out with a groveling apology. Too little, too late. The public support was overwhelming, but what meant the most to me were the letters from other nurses, from people who worked in healthcare, thanking me for showing that love and compassion still mattered in this world. Patients' families wrote to tell me how my story had inspired them to look for the helpers instead of focusing on the negativity. Ashton and I used this moment to create something meaningful. We established the Second Chances Foundation, dedicated to helping homeless individuals with mental health issues get back on their feet. We provide not just shelter and medical care, but job training, counseling, and most importantly, hope. Because sometimes all someone needs is one person who believes in them when they can't believe in themselves. Today, 3 years after I found a broken man in a hospital parking garage, we're happier than ever. I still work as a nurse, not because I have to, but because it's who I am. Ashton still makes my coffee every morning, and we still talk for hours about everything and nothing. The only difference is that now, when people see us together, they see what was always true. Two people who found each other when they needed it most and chose to build a life based on love, not status or wealth. So what would you do if someone you loved was being unfairly judged by the entire world? Would you stand by them, or would you let public opinion sway you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I'd love to hear from you. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that there's always more to someone's story than what appears on the surface, please subscribe for more real-life accounts of love conquering the odds. Remember, sometimes the people the world loves to hate are actually the heroes of the story. Sometimes the truth is worth fighting for, no matter how loud the lies become. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really does win in the end. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for believing in the power of truth. And thank you for reminding me that there are still people in this world who choose to see the good in others, even when it's easier to believe the worst.